Now let's see the techniques for evaluating limits. What does it mean by evaluating? Is that you're going to find a value for that limits. Okay, so these are the techniques or the methods that we're going to use. The first one is substitution. The second one is factorization, and the third one is the conjugate method. Okay. So the first one is substitution, ganti, penggantian, ganti masuk. Okay, let's say you have a function, find evaluate limit x squared minus 1 over 2x plus 3 as x approaches 0. Okay, so you're going to use method substitution method. Now we're going to substitute the x value, all the x value you have in the function, you substitute it with 0. So now you have x squared, it's become 0 squared minus 1, and then this x over here, you just substitute it with 0. And then you just key in your calculator and you get negative 1 over 3. Okay, so that is substitution method. Let's get the answer is negative 1 over 3. Okay, not that substitution won't always work. Okay, dia kata dekat situ, method substitution ni tidak semestinya berhasil. Okay, for example, we have limit x squared minus 6x plus 8 over x minus 2 as x approaches 2. Okay, let's substitute the x equal to 2. Okay. Then all the x value over here, you just substitute it with 2. Then you get, when you key in into the calculator, you get 0 over 0. So you can see that this is indeterminate form. We call it as indeterminate form bila you dapat dalam bentuk macam ni. So we're going to use other method, which is factorization and conjugate multiplication. So this shows that substitution won't always work. Terutama bila you dapat macam ni lah, 0 over 0. Okay. So we're going to use other methods, factorization or conjugate multiplication. So let's see how we're going to solve this one using factorization, pemfaktoran. So you have x squared minus 6x plus 8 over x minus 2. So this thing, when you key in into calculator, you will, when you factorize it, since this is a quadratic equation, you can factorize it, then you can get x minus 4 times x minus 2. Okay, so you can see that these two things is actually the same. Since this is division, hasil bahagi, you boleh, this one can cancel out. So the only thing left is x minus 4. Now you can substitute the value of x. Okay, so you boleh ganti masuk 2 minus 4, you get negative 2. Okay, so now you can see that the answer is different for when you use substitution method. Previously you get 0 over 0, but now when you use factorization, you get the answer is equal to negative 2. Okay. Then this is that one is factorization. This one is the third method, which is conjugate method. Conjugate means we're going to see what does it mean by conjugate. So let's say you have this function, set x or square root of x minus 4 divided by x minus 16 when x approaching, as x approaching 16. So conjugate method is usually, we use it usually when you have this kind of set. Okay, ada bentuk punca kuasa ni macam ni, then you can use conjugate method. Or when you have fraction, ada bentuk pecahan, then you can use conjugate. So what happen is that kalau you guna substitution, you akan dapat 0 over 0. Why is it so? Because when you use substitution method, you substitute 16 into this. Square root of 16, you get 4. 4 minus 4, you get 0, right? And then 16 minus 16, you get 0 over 0. That one is when you use substitution method. You will get indeterminate form like this, 0 over 0. That's why you're going to use factorization or conjugate. So, this is a conjugate method. Okay, you have this function originally. Now you have another function. You multiply it with a conjugate. Conjugate means that you have the same function but with a different operation. For example, you have square root of x minus 4. Now the conjugate become square root of x plus 4. That is conjugate. Operasi yang berbeza. Function yang sama tapi operasi dia yang berbeza. Kalau dekat sini you get minus, then the conjugate will become plus. Okay, so only the one with the square root or with the third you going to have the conjugate. Yang dekat bawah ni tidak perlu lah. So you will have a set of conjugate macam ni. Square root x plus 4, square root over square root x plus 4. So this thing is actually equal to 1. Okay, this is actually equal to 1. Ni, sorry. Okay, this one is, this whole thing is actually equal to 1. So, tidak effect pun bila you multiply this thing dengan 1. Okay, cuma you simply write, you rather than you use 1, rather than you write 1, multiply with 1, it's better for you to write it in this form, the conjugate. Okay. Again, not this fraction has a value of 1 and multiplying by 1 does not affect a fraction value. Tu dia dah bagi tahu. So, what happen when you have a conjugate? So that it's easier, kita boleh mansuhkan yang ada set ni, kita boleh mansuhkan. That's why we have this thing. Okay. So now you can multiply macam biasalah. Set times set, you hilanglah set dia kan. Bila square root x multiply with square root x, you get only x. Then you kembangkan macam biasa. Ni darab ni, ni darab ni, ni darab ni lah. Kembangkan until you get this one. Okay. Then, sorry, yang dekat bawah ni pun, you just multiply it. Okay. You just expand it. X times x minus 16 multiply with this whole thing. Okay, now you realize that this thing above the numerator is actually equal to one of the factor in the denominator. They actually sama, so you boleh cancel out. So bila you dah cancel out, the only thing left is 1 over square root of x plus 4. Okay, now this one looks simple kan? Dia lagi nampak simple. Square root of x plus 4 ni, yang ni. So what happen is that you boleh dah substitute the x value. Yang ni kita dah boleh ganti masuk lah, 16 plus 4, then you get the answer 1 over 8. Okay, that one is conjugate method. Okay, remember what is conjugate? Conjugate when you have ada square root macam ni, ada bentuk square root, you're going to write it down again, but only with a different operation. Dekat sini minus, then the square root. The conjugate become plus. Okay, kalau dia mesti sama lah satu set. Yang atas ni square root x plus 4, di bawah pun square root x plus 4. Sebab this one is actually equal to 1. Okay, I think that's all for the techniques of evaluating limits. We have 3 techniques or 3 methods. The first one is substitution, but remember substitution won't always work because sometimes you will get indeterminate form, which is 0 over 0. That's why we're going to move on to the second technique, which is factorization. But sometimes when it involves set or square root, then you can't use factorization. You need to use conjugate method. So that is the last option you have, conjugate methods.